All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. We have got a post-game show. The Dodgers come out and get a win in Game 1 of the NLDS, 5-1. It was a rough start, but they figured it out towards the end. The bullpen looked really good, so we'll have lots of live takeaways as the night goes on. If you're joining us on Periscope or on Twitter or on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever you are joining us, leave us your comments. Let us know what you're thinking, what your reactions are. And Daniel, I'll just start with you. We'll get sort of a blow-by-blow of how we got here. But as we start the show, what was the biggest takeaway for you, the headline?
I'm going to start with the bullpen because they were awesome all night. Walker Buehler couldn't provide the length that we're used to, but that was kind of expected with his blister issue. So it was a big bullpen night. They were asked to cover 5 innings. And they didn't give up a single run. So they were awesome. Props to them. Dustin May looked great. Who else pitched? Victor Gonzalez looked great. Blake Trinan came in a big spot, and then Kenley shut it down. So that's where I'm starting with tonight. Props to the Dodger bullpen.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, it was kind of a funky night for the Dodgers. Obviously, the big headline, I think, sort of right off the bat is Mike Clevenger. It was big news that he was starting the game for the Padres. Of course, he goes 1 inning. He looked really good. I guess I'd never actually seen him pitch. Probably the weirdest delivery I've ever seen out of a starting pitcher.
Yeah. He's just always moving.
Always moving. So bizarre. I loved how one of the announcers kind of joked about how off the field he's like the chillest guy, but on the field you would think he was an absolute maniac. But he comes out in the second inning. He throws a 4-seam fastball to Cody Bellinger that's just 91 miles an hour. He throws a breaking ball that's 77 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden, he's out, and the Dodgers are immediately into the Padre bullpen, which is something that both you and I talked about, and from there it was all downhill. And so, again, we'll get to the play-by-play here in just a moment, but we appreciate you all joining us wherever you're watching. Let me throw this out. In a little bit, so not right now, hold on to them, but in a little bit we're going to do a giveaway. We've got a brand new Dodger hat we're going to give away, and the way we're going to do it is this. I'm going to ask for your headline for tomorrow's story. So, back in the day when people actually read newspapers, it would be, what's the headline for this Dodgers story? What is your headline? We'll read a bunch of them. Daniel and I will pick our favorite. That person, you'll get a free hat. So all you got to do is you've got to follow us on either Facebook or Twitter and be subscribed to our YouTube. As long as you meet those requirements, send us a headline and we'll get to it from there. But let's break down how we got here. 5-1. It feels comfortable now. There was a lot of anxiety there. The Laker game ends, the big win for the Lakers, and then you flip over to the Dodger game more consistently, and all of a sudden it's kind of like the Dodgers had no hits through 4, deep into the 5th, and it was sort of like what was going to happen. I think the big thing at the beginning, too, was Walker Buehler, you mentioned. In the second inning, he walks the bases loaded with 1 out. So it's the first time all season he walked 3 batters in an inning. The team had done it. Buehler does it. Then he strikes out Profar. And then Trent Grisham comes up, Trent Grisham's been a good player for the Padres this year, and he gets ahead 3-0 on Buehler. Buehler comes back, fastball for a strike, fastball to the strike. Pitch. The second strike was absolutely fantastic, right on the bottom corner of the zone, and then he gets a 99-mile-an-hour fastball that Grisham swings right through. And that was a huge moment. That felt like it could have been busted open really, really early, and it wasn't. But you kind of mentioned the Dodgers didn't get a ton out of Buehler. He settled down from there. But what did you see from Buehler tonight, Daniel?
Yeah, like you said, that second inning was huge. That was a big spot, obviously early in the game, but you could find games getting away pretty quickly in the postseason if your starter loses his command like that. So good on Buehler for battling there, but his command was just off all night. It wasn't anything crazy. Like, I felt like he was just throwing below, like 3 inches below the zone the whole time.
Yeah,
and just wasn't getting any calls, which was unfortunate, but he didn't have his best stuff. But good for him to battle, get through 4, give his team at least some length. We know it's a long 5-game series, so any length is greatly appreciated. I'm sure the Padres can attest to that right now.
Yeah.
So good for Buehler to get through 4. He only gave up the 1 run, which that's fine. That keeps your team in the game. But we'll see what he's got moving forward. This is not the best version of Walker Buehler, whether it's because of the blister or just the fact that he's barely thrown this whole season pretty much. So I'm not exactly sure what to expect from him moving forward. But I mean, it was 4 solid innings tonight, and he turned it over to the bullpen that took care of the rest.
Yeah, it was interesting because they said he was wild at one point, and they almost retracted that immediately because it was bizarre. It was like everything was missing by just a little bit, and yet it kept missing. It kept being low. It kept being low. It kept being low. It kept being inside. But I mean, props to him. He pulls it out. He gets out of the second inning. Maybe a little bit of generosity from the umpire. I thought overall the umpire was pretty good, or at least consistent. I shouldn't say good. He was fine, not good. But he gets out of it, and then he comes back. He has a 1-2-3 inning in the third. I mean, he got 12 outs tonight, and 8 of them were via the strikeout. Now, we had a lot of walks, too, so it was kind of a balance there. But he does give up the run in the fourth inning, but then he gets out of it. 4 innings, 1 run. That's not terrible. Obviously, you want more from a guy like Walker Buehler, but from there, kind of the bullpen took over. Dustin May came in. Dustin May was perfect through 2 innings. He gets 6 up, 6 down. And then there was some talk on the broadcast about whether or not they should have left Dustin May in. Now, hindsight, obviously, Gonzalez comes in and does great. Trinan comes in and does great. Jansen comes in and does great. So hindsight, it's really easy to say, well, of course they made the right decision. In that moment for you, what did you think about leaving Dustin May in?
Taking him out, you mean?
Sorry, taking him out, yeah.
I agreed with it. It's a long series. We're not exactly sure what the Dodgers' plan is for their pitching staff other than Kershaw starting tomorrow. So we don't know what they're planning to do with May. But if you send him out there for 4 or 5 innings tonight, he very well could be done for the whole series, or maybe he's out till game 4 or 5. So now you kept it a very manageable 2 innings, 27 pitches, which is basically like a bullpen day for May. And he hasn't pitched in a while regardless, so it was good to let him get some game action and face some hitters. He looked great. He was sitting 100 at the knees. He's just nasty. But I didn't mind taking him out after 2 innings because now, in theory, he could be back out of the bullpen again in game 3. He could start game 4. So there's so many possibilities. The Padres don't, like us, they don't know what to expect moving forward, which is a good thing. So, I liked what I saw out of May, but I didn't think we got so many fresh arms right now. I didn't think it needed to be a case of May taking up the final 5 innings of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Dodgers drew it up exactly as it played out. They got great innings, 2 great innings from May, but they knew it said, well, if we can get to our bullpen and only need 3 innings from the bullpen. Now, at this time, it was 1-0. They get 1 run on the Bellinger error to tie it, but so they couldn't have known necessarily that they only were going to need 3. I mean, if you had told me this game went 12 innings, I would have believed you the way the first 5 innings played out. But it kind of once the Dodgers, if they had known, hey, we only need 3 more innings, then they've got the recipe there. I mean, Gonzalez, Trinan, Jansen, you have Gratterall and McGee if you need them. So I agree with you. I think the Dodgers believe in their bullpen. And again, even if it went 12, I think they wouldn't have – that might not have even changed their plans because if May can come back, knowing how dominant he was tonight, now you feel great about him as a Game 4 starter or Game 5 starter or whenever you would need him again. And so May was great. Then we get back to the offense. And again, thanks everybody for joining us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Stick around for a few more minutes. We're going to do a headline competition and give away a hat. But first, we've got to get through the game. The Dodgers tie the game. They get fortunate. It never feels like the Dodgers get fortunate in the playoffs, but Bellinger reaches on an error. Turner scores from second to tie the game. Again, they still had no hits through the bottom of the 5th. They were 0 for 11 with runners on. Bellinger reaches on an error. Then you have Pollock comes up, thinks he gets a home run. We'll talk about the ballpark here in a little bit. He gets 361 feet right down the line. Easy catch. But then in the 6th inning, everything breaks through. Chris Taylor reaches. Mookie doubles. Corey Seager sac fly. Turner, 70-mile-an-hour exit velocity single to right. Muncy absolutely crushes a double. Will Smith, intentional walk, which again, I mean, intentionally walking to get to Cody Bellinger. Imagine that. He gets an infield single, 71-mile-an-hour exit velocity, wild pitch. A.J. Pollock pops out, and all of a sudden, the thing's wide open. Jace Tingler gets thrown out, which I've got thoughts on that. The Dodgers bat around. They add 4 runs. They go 5-1 heading into the 7th, and from there, it was all the bullpen. Gonzalez, a super easy 7th inning. He does come back out to face Grisham because I'm guessing they wanted to bring a righty in, didn't want to have to make a lefty face 3 straight there. So he faces Grisham, gives up a double, but then Trinan comes in and was absolutely filthy. A strikeout, a ground out, a strikeout. His breaking ball was great. His cutter was great. His 2-seamer was absolutely unbelievable. He comes back out for the 9th inning, gets 1 batter. Jansen comes back for the last 2 outs and seals the deal. So all in all, the Dodgers win 5-1. I wouldn't say it was pretty, but I would say it was fairly predictable as far as how it played out. The Dodgers get really good pitching up and down, and they just have enough bats. I mean, if Mookie Betts is going to bat 4 or 5 times in a game, he's going to break through at some point. Muncy got it going. So I think all in all, it was pretty predictable as far as how this game would have played out. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. It was kind of similar to the Brewers series, specifically Game 2, where it just felt like they couldn't get anything going for a while. And then once they did in the middle innings, it was kind of over from there, which that's what we've seen all year from this offense. They wear pitchers and teams down. They might not score in the first, second, or third inning, but they're making pitchers work. They were taking walks today. They didn't get a hit until the 6th inning or whatever it was, but I think they took 10 walks in the game. Yeah, so it felt like they had runners on pretty much every inning to start the game. They just couldn't get them in, which is unfortunate. And obviously we'd like to see that improve moving forward so it's less stressful. Yeah. But I also think if this game was played in a different ballpark, we're talking about it in a different light, because the Dodgers hit maybe like 5 balls that would be home runs in a lot of other places. Specifically the Pollock one that you mentioned. I thought I had that ball in the 3rd deck. I was typing out home run on the Dodger Blue Twitter because I live tweet the games. But, they couldn't really break through to get the big hit until that 6th inning when they had a Giants-like inning where they barely hit the ball at the infield. The exit velocities were low, but sometimes that's what it takes to get it done. So they did enough tonight. It wasn't anywhere close to their best offensive performance. So hopefully they could get better moving forward.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I will say, it's not like the Padres had balls going to the warning track. I mean, I can't think of a single ball the Padres hit that made it out there. So the 2nd inning was rough, but really from there, I mean, Grisham reaching on a double, but by then it was 5-1. You didn't really feel too bad about anything going on. So again, aside from that 2nd inning, the Dodgers were able to kind of keep things in check. So if you're just joining us, let's do our giveaway now. If you're following us on YouTube or on Periscope or Twitter or Facebook, wherever you are following, here's what we need. I want you to give me your headline from tonight's game. So if you were writing a story tomorrow morning about this baseball game, what would your headline be? To be eligible to win this hat, you have to be subscribed to our YouTube channel and be following us either on Facebook or on Twitter. That way we can just get your information. But wherever you are at, send us your headline. We'll read them out, and Daniel and I will pick our favorite one. That person will get a hat tonight. So for me, I think it's pretty simple. Dodger bullpen does its job. I mean, to me, that's the headline. We know the strength of this team is the bullpen. The way the playoffs set up is perfect for this team with 5 games in 5 days, and then the next round, 7 games in 7 days. This is going to be a test of the depth of bullpen. And really, in this series, you won't necessarily see it. I really think it's the NLCS and the ALCS where the bullpens are really going to be taxed with 5 games now and then a short break and then 7 games. But, I mean, this was super simple for the Dodgers. The Dodgers didn't get deep into their bullpen. They don't feel rested. And yet on the other side, the Padres needed to get 8 innings out of their bullpen. None of those innings were easy. As you said, tons and tons of walks, tons and tons of pitches. And at the end of the day, between the bullpens, this one was all Dodgers.
Yeah, and I do want to give props to one of the San Diego relievers, Ryan Weathers. He made his major league debut tonight. He hasn't pitched above A ball, and I think he pitched like a scoreless inning. He went 1.1 scoreless innings, so that's pretty cool to see. 20 years old, so I'll give him a little credit. But yeah, at this rate, the Padres are going to run out of pitching unless they get some length from Paddock. Is Paddock pitching tomorrow? I assume so.
I think so, yeah.
So they need some length out of him badly, and then Zach Davies in Game 3, or else they can't just be throwing 9 guys out there every game and expecting to have some success, especially against this Dodgers offense, which, as we talked about, wears you down and will take their walks when they have to. So we'll see what Paddock could give the Padres tomorrow. But if he could give them, 5-6 innings, that would be absolutely huge for them.
Yeah, I mean, last series they went 8 pitchers or 9 in every single one of those games. They went 3 games. Tonight they're back at 9. 6 of the 9, I believe, issued a walk. All of them had at least 10 pitches. So I would imagine any of those guys who pitch tomorrow are unavailable for Game 3, potentially Game 4. Right. Now, we didn't see their 2 best relievers didn't pitch, Rosenthal and Pomeranz, so there is that. But to me, that's the headline. Well, let's read some of these, some headlines that we got sent in. Barrels overrated. Obviously, referring to the Dodgers' 2 exit velocities of 70 miles an hour, kind of being the 2 biggest hits. Not to mention a wild pitch and a sac fly and an error. I mean, those are the 5 runs the Dodgers scored. We're on 2 infield singles, basically a wild pitch, an error, and a sac fly. So that's pretty good. Dodgers walk it on. No ballpark could hold the Dodgers from winning. Kershaw throws 8. Okay, I don't know. Somebody's talking about Kershaw throwing 8. I'm just reading these without thinking. I guess they're thinking I'm talking about predicting the headline for tomorrow night's game. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. We're talking about headlines from tonight's game. But anyways, 3 down, 10 to go. Dodgers take advantage of San Diego's mistakes. Dodgers prove hitting beats pitching. Dodgers relievers take game 1. Padres bullpen depleted in game 1. Can't play us the way they played the Cardinals. So those are some of the submissions. What do you think, Daniel? Any of those jump out to you?
I kind of giggled at the stadium one. What?
No ballpark could hold the Dodgers from winning.
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Okay. Well, no ballpark could hold the Dodgers from winning. Maxwell Dunlap, congratulations. You're getting yourself a hat. Why don't you send me a message? Follow me on Twitter at Jeff Spiegel. Or you can send us a message on Facebook, Dodger Blue 1958, one of those 2. Maxwell Dunlap, you're our winner for tonight. Send us your information and we'll get you a hat in the mail, so congratulations to you. But there were some other things that sort of jumped out to me tonight that I thought were interesting. I mean, I guess one funny thing. What did you think of the San Diego manager getting ejected in the middle of that Dodger rally? It's the 6th inning. The Dodgers had already scored a couple. Jace Tingler comes out to get his pitcher, Garrett Richards, who had been complaining, who was mad about a particular call that went against him. It was called a ball. The ironic part was that it was clearly a ball on the broadcast. It wasn't even close. And the manager comes out and just F-bomb, 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 F-bomb at the home plate umpire. Now, I had Padre fans in Twitter telling me, A, that the umpire was a mess, but B, that they thought, hey, it's the playoffs. Give this guy a break. You shouldn't have thrown him that quickly. I mean, to me, he earned it. It looked like a guy that wanted to get thrown out. Maybe he was trying to fire up his team. In a bullpen game, that seems like a mistake, but what did you think about that scene? Did he deserve to be thrown out? Did he have anything to complain about?
I mean, I was confused at first because I'll be the first one to criticize an umpire when he's bad, and I legit didn't feel like the umpire was that bad for either side on tonight. So I was kind of taken back by it. Like at first, I was like, "What's he arguing?" And then I realized it was that call to Mookie or whatever, which was the correct call. But once he started arguing, it seemed like the umpire gave him a chance to calm down, and he just kept going at the umpire. So he kind of had no choice but to throw him out. And poor Skip Schumacher, former Dodger, who had to take over as the acting manager and manage that bullpen for the rest of the game. They had already thrown 6 or 7 pitchers. He probably didn't even know who was left. But yeah, I wasn't sure what he was angry at. Maybe he was just trying to fire up his team. But obviously, it didn't work tonight.
Yeah, and it was interesting because he did kind of have some decisions to make from that point forward as far as who to intentionally walk, who not to intentionally walk, who to pull and not. I mean, this was right in the middle of that rally. The Dodgers did go on to add a couple more. But yeah, I mean, I felt like they showed the umpire at one point turn away and give the guy sort of some room, and the guy just kept. I mean, it's like, how many F-bombs can you take? At some point. So then he tossed him, and it felt deserved. It just felt like a guy who was frustrated. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to overreact, but there were a couple moments where it kind of felt like, okay, the Padres haven't really been here before. Like that felt like one of those moments of okay, this is a manager that's managing in his first super meaningful game ever. You had the error from the second baseman. Maybe it was Hosmer's fault, but it was sort of on the wrong side of the first baseman. But those are, now the Dodgers make those mistakes, but there were a couple times where it just felt like, oh, right, the Padres haven't been here before. If you do believe that experience matters, I felt like that came through a couple different times.
Yeah, the Padres look like a young team tonight, just with their, sloppy defense. We saw, I don't know, Hosmer should have caught that ball in my opinion. But, I mean, who am I?
Might not have even been on first base had he even caught it. I mean, he was all over the place with his feet.
I didn't get that. He was straddling the base. So that was just a weird play, and that was what kind of was the first one to break through, and then it was kind of over from there. Yeah, they just look like a young, inexperienced team, and I'm sure they'll come out with more energy tomorrow. But all we've seen from this Padres team this season is all the energy and swag that they play with. But I guess when you're shutting them down, They can't really come with that. I think Tatis and Machado were combined 1 for 8 with 4 strikeouts. So props to the Dodgers pitching staff for neutralizing them, because I feel like this Padres offense kind of comes and goes with those two guys.
Yeah, well, Lamette Slider, who I'm not sure which team he's rooting for, but he disagrees with our narrative saying that there's 15 players on the Padres team with playoff experience. So, yes, I mean, that is. Tatis does not have any. He's your best player. And I mean, Grisham, we know about Grisham's playoff experience. It's not a positive experience. If you want to count Manny Machado as a Dodger, I mean, we could all tell you how his playoff experience went. So Hosmer is obviously a guy that's a big one, but Cronenworth hasn't been there. Many of these pitchers haven't been there. So, I mean, sure, they might have some guys, but we're talking about a manager in his first time. And at the heart of that order, Will Myers, not a guy with a ton of playoff experience, he's the longest tenured Padre. We know they haven't been there. So at the heart of the lineup outside of Hosmer, there's not really anybody who has pelts on the wall. Now, you could look at the Dodgers and say, well, who does over there? Obviously, Mookie's got a World Series, but at least they have lots of guys that have made multiple World Series runs. So that is interesting. But a couple more things I want to talk about before we sign off for tonight. Obviously, it's a late one. This game went just about forever, it felt like. But I want to talk about the ballpark. I want to talk about the bullpen in the ninth inning, and then we'll move on and talk a little bit about Clayton Kershaw tomorrow. But a couple people in the comments have asked this. To who's advantaged by the way the ballpark is playing? Now, obviously, tonight, the Dodgers were the ones hitting a ton of warning track fly balls. The Padres had none. Neither team was able to hit a home run. The Dodgers have played here. We know the ball's going to go out at some point, but do you is it to the Dodgers' advantage if this stadium plays big, playing against a team that seems so dependent on home runs and big momentum swings like the Padres?
Yeah, it certainly can be. I mean, we've seen this Dodger offense is able to get it done in a variety of ways. They didn't need the long ball tonight, even though they probably should have had a few if it was somewhere else. But, they're taking walks. They had their infield singles. So they found a way to get it done. Whereas I feel like most of the success we've seen from the Padres this season is when they get that big home run, the big grand slam, whatever the case may be. So, and a lot of the Dodgers' October failures have come with their pitchers and their bullpen giving up home runs. So if this park plays really big, then it's a big advantage to the Dodgers pitching staff, which may outweigh the disadvantage that it is for the offense. We're just going to have to wait and see. I don't think it'll play as big as it did tonight.
Yeah.
I kind of remember from the regular season series, the first game we all had the same reaction. And then as the weekend went on, the Dodgers started getting some and the ball went over the fence. So I'm expecting more homers in the future. But, hey, if this Dodgers pitching staff, which can be vulnerable to home runs at times, is going to be playing in a big ballpark, then that sounds good to me as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it seems like it's great news for a guy like Kershaw. It's great news for a guy like Jansen. The flip side, though, is, as some people have pointed out, the Dodgers actually uniquely have constructed a bullpen that's reliant on sinker ball pitchers. And so if you're so dependent on sinker balls, it feels like you could play in a big park, you could play in a small park, and guys like Treinen are going to be okay. They're going to get ground balls more than they are relying on fly balls. So in that sense, maybe, excuse me, it hurts the Dodgers just because they're almost built to get ground balls. And yet I just keep coming back to, I mean, when you watch Padre games, it's almost like they seem lifeless until they can get a big home run, until they can get a big hit. It felt like Grisham's double was kind of that moment that you started to think, is this going to be it? And then Treinen comes in and absolutely shuts the door. So I think the Dodgers can kind of weather some of these storms, whereas the Padres, I'm not so sure. And if the Padres can't hit home runs in this series, I do think that could be a problem. So let's look at. Go ahead.
One quick thing. I do think that one advantage that the Dodgers will have is that they're going to be playing in this stadium the whole postseason, because the NLCS will be there and also the World Series. So they'll get used to it as they go along. Whereas whoever's coming in for the NLCS, if the Dodgers advance, of course, but whether it's the Braves or Marlins, that'll be their first time playing in the stadium, period, since it's a brand new stadium. And then in the World Series, if the Astros or A's make it, they've played it. But if it's the Rays or Yankees, they haven't played there either. So I think it'll wind up being an advantage to the Dodgers. It doesn't seem like it is now, but I think it's huge getting accustomed to that ballpark and getting comfortable there. Whereas,
Yeah.
these other teams are going to be flying in.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. And I think somebody had a graphic where this was like, the Houston ballpark and the Rangers ballpark are two of the worst home run stadiums, whereas Dodger Stadium and Padres Stadium both gave up tons of home runs. Now, of course, that's influenced by the fact that the Dodgers and Padres hit a lot more home runs than a team like the Rangers did. But the other interesting storyline that I was looking forward to, especially in a 5-1 game, is how the Dodgers would use their bullpen in the 8th and 9th innings. Gonzalez comes in for the 7th. No questions there. Trinan comes in for the 8th. Now, that was interesting only because the Padres' best hitters were coming up in the 8th. So he came in. Obviously, Gonzalez gave up a double to Grisham. Trinan comes in, and he gets Tatis, Machado, and Hosmer in order. So the hardest part of the order is there. Trinan comes back for Will Myers in the top of the 9th as well. So I put up a poll going into the 9th, and I said, all right, Dodger fans, who do you want in the 9th inning? Trinan has just given you 3 great outs, so you could bring him back. You could bring in Jansen, who was throwing 86, 87 miles an hour just a few days ago, or you could go to Gratterall, or you could go to Jake McGee. Now, I don't know if you saw the results of this, but did you see who the most popular choices was among Dodger fans?
Well, I mean, I saw the poll right after you posted it, and the most popular response was Gratterall.
60%. 60% of Dodger fans said they wanted Gratterall in the 9th. Jansen finished second ahead of Trinan, and then McGee was last. So your reactions to that? To me, it feels I like Gratterall. I think he's going to be great. I'm not saying I like Jansen more than I like Gratterall, but it seems interesting to me that 60%, there's a clear choice amongst those 4, and it's a guy who's super young. And there he was.
Yeah, I mean, I love Gratterall too, so I'm not going to hate on anyone that voted for him. I voted for Kenley on that poll just because the middle to bottom of the order was coming up, so it wasn't like he was coming in to face Tatis, Machado, and those guys. I liked Trinan facing those guys in the 8th. I thought that was a great move by Robert, so credit to him there. And I just thought with the 5-1 cushion, it's a perfect spot to get Kenley in there. Let him get his confidence up by having a scoreless outing. And he looked better too. His velo was up to 91, as you mentioned, which is a lot better than the 86 it was last week. But it was a comfortable 5-1 lead. And any sign of trouble, you could have someone getting loose behind him. I'm not sure if anyone was, to be honest. But I know if guys started to get on base, then someone would have got up for sure. So I thought that was a good spot for Kenley just to get his confidence up.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick shout out to Carlos Medina, who says he's joining us from Colombia. So shout out to Carlos Medina in Colombia. We're international apparently, which is a big deal. So we can blame the Dodgers for that, I think, more than us. But yeah, I thought with a 4-run lead, this was the perfect opportunity to bring in Jansen, especially with the ballpark playing the way that it was. I mean, the home run ball is what kills Kenley Jansen, it feels like. And so if you knew he wasn't going to give up a home run, and as you pointed out, I liked that Trinan got the best hitters, so Jansen didn't have to face them. It felt like a great opportunity to get him in there in a tough situation. Still, it's still the 9th inning of NLDS Game 1. It's 4 runs. It's not 10. And he looked good. 91 miles an hour. The ball's moving. Guys are swinging straight through it. So I thought all in all it was a big game for Jansen. Now, if you're an anti-Kenley Jansen fan, I think you probably didn't like this because he looked good enough to where if Game 2 or Game 3 is a safe situation, I would bet as much money as in my wallet that he's the guy that's coming out for the 9th because I think that Robert saw what he was hoping to see out of him, even if it sort of might have been a flash in the pan, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if he's throwing 91 and moving like that, I think a lot of people like me who had concerns when he was at 87, I feel a lot better. I've said before, I think all 4 of the guys I mentioned are really good. You could throw Victor Gonzalez in there. I think the Dodgers have 5 really good relievers, but I don't think they have one elite reliever. So if you're forcing me to choose, sure, give me Jansen, the guy who's been there, the guy who you don't have to ruffle any feathers to make that decision. I don't think he's any more or less reliable, really, than any of the rest of those guys. And so it's interesting to me that 60% want Gratterall. He is good, but again, until he starts missing bats more consistently, it's going to be hard to trust him in those big spots, at least for me, as nasty as his stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the thing with Kenley is like it's not like he's just straight up bad, like just gets rocked every time. I think he had like scoreless outings in like 90% of his appearances this year. It's just you just never know what you're gonna get from him,
Yeah.
right? Like from outing to outing, he looks like a completely different guy. His velo changes, his commands off or on, his cutter's cutting or it's not. So I think the inconsistency is what makes Dodger fans kind of sketched out whenever he's coming out of the bullpen, just because you don't know what guy you're going to get.
Yeah.
But it was good. We got good Kenley tonight. He took care of business. We'll see tomorrow if he's back in there, or if it's a similar case maybe to the Brewers where in Game 2 they went to Gratterall for the save. So
Yeah.
I think Roberts is going to kind of manage the bullpen strategically because he doesn't want to overwork any of his arms, just because we know it's a long postseason and there's not a whole lot of off days. So maybe he doesn't go to Jansen tomorrow just to keep him fresh. But I guess we'll see if it's a close game late who he goes to.
Yeah, yeah, and let's look ahead. We'll close the show by talking about tomorrow. Clayton Kershaw on the mound for the Dodgers. I think the assumption is that Chris Paddock will be going for the Padres, especially in a game where they just need a guy to eat up some innings. Now, you and I think, both agreed before the series that we would have preferred Clayton Kershaw in Game 1, giving them the option to bring him back in Game 5. Now, that said, knowing the Dodgers won Game 1, I love the fact that they can come back with Kershaw, who is the Dodgers' best pitcher right now, who is their most reliable pitcher, who is a lefty, who the Padres have struggled with lefties more so than righties this season, even though that doesn't seem to make sense given how many right-handed bats they are. But with a game that they talk about shutdown innings, the offense scores a bunch of runs, and you need the pitcher to come out the next half inning and just shut things down to almost double up on how significant the runs felt. Tomorrow feels like a shutdown game. It feels like a game where the Padres aren't going to overreact. We joked about how they're young, they might be inexperienced, but at the end of the day, it's a 5-game series. Nobody believes this game is to be over. And yet, if Clayton Kershaw can come out tomorrow and do even 85 or 90% of what he did against the Brewers in round 1, I think it could be devastating if the Dodgers can go up 2-0, knowing the Padres have no starting pitching left after Paddock, if you even like Paddock that much. But it'll be really fascinating. If Kershaw can beat Kershaw tomorrow, I think that goes a long way towards making this series shorter than maybe the Padre fans are hoping for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I do think one thing is good about this ballpark is it's good for a guy like Kershaw, who I feel like every time he gets burned in the postseason, it's on like a big 3-run homer or something. Yeah. So maybe playing in a ballpark like this will help, because Kershaw's not a guy that teams string hits together against. You don't see him giving up, 3, 4, 5 hits in an inning. It's usually a hit here, a walk there, and then the homer, and that's all the damage. So if he comes out how he did against the Brewers, then I'm not expecting the Padres to score a whole lot of runs. Obviously, a big thing with Kershaw, kind of like Kenley, is he's been inconsistent in the postseason as well. So we truly don't know what we're going to get out of him, but for most of this season, he's been consistently great, and I expect more of the same. He's got an extra day of rest, so he's feeling fresh, and I'm expecting him to come out and do his thing.
Yeah, now, given that it's 5 games in 5 days as we look to the bullpen, do you think, does Dave Roberts manage in a way as if to say, hey, if we can close this out in 3, it's going to be great? Or do you have to plan for 5 the whole time? Do you tax the bullpen? If tomorrow, if it's 3-2 in the 7th inning, do you go back to Gonzalez, Treinen, and Jansen, knowing that, hey, if you can get this one, who knows what happens? Or do you sort of flip the bullpen, almost like bullpen A and bullpen B, and you go with Kelly and McGee and Gratterall instead?
Right. Yeah, that's a tough question because you truly don't know how things are going to play out. You don't know how long this series is going to go. But to me, if you see an opportunity to go win a game, I think you have to take it. You got to go with your best guys. Even if let's say Kenley and Treinen both pitch tomorrow, they'd be out for Game 3 and then back for Games 4 and 5. So that's not a huge deal to me. So I think if you see an opportunity to go win a game, you go for it, and you go up 2-0, and then you worry about the rest later.
Yeah.
I think no matter what happens, the Dodgers are in a much better spot pitching-wise than the Padres. So that's something to consider as well. But if you could take a 2-0 lead, you got to do it. And then you figure you get one of the next 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Let's end with some predictions, Daniel. The Dodgers win 5-1 tonight. They get a big, again, the MVP, I think, is the bullpen for the Dodgers. It gives them 5 absolutely dominant innings. There's nobody on offense. Mookie had a big hit. Muncy had a big hit. But aside from that, nothing too significant offensively. So what's your prediction for tomorrow? Maybe give me a score and then one guy or Clayton Kershaw, your thoughts on Kershaw, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Look, there's a lot of people who are very high on Chris Paddock and think he's a future ace and the next big thing. I personally am not one of those people. I think he's, a number 3 or number 4 starter at best. He didn't look good in the wild card round against a Cardinals offense that's just not very good at all. So I'm expecting the Dodgers to jump on him early, much like the Cardinals did. And I'm also expecting Kershaw to be great again. So I'll go with I'm going to say 7-2 Dodgers. I'll say Cody's going to hit a big 3-run homer early. That'll help lead them to victory. That's my prediction.
A 450-foot home run that gets into the first row of the seats and down the right field line.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if you're still joining us, we appreciate lots of you still watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. Send us your prediction in the chat. We've got Grayson says Dodgers sweep the series tomorrow. They win 6-2. Brixco says Padres 5, Dodgers 2. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the Dodger bats struggled, but then once you see a couple hits go the way that they did in that 6th inning, it just feels like the momentum starts to build. Mookie gets a double. I think the biggest one was Muncy. I mean, this is a guy who has been just awful, and he smoked a ball. Yeah. And it just felt like the type of thing that gets a guy going. I think we've said that probably 15 times, and I'm an optimist, so I keep thinking this is the hit that's going to get him going. This is the hit. Hopefully that's it. But I think Muncy gets 2 or 3 hits tomorrow, and I think he's the key. But, yeah, I think Kershaw's really good. I think the Dodgers have plenty of fresh arms in the bullpen. And I think the Padres score a few, so I'll give them 3 runs, but I think the Dodgers really score a lot tomorrow with the taxed bullpen. So I'm going to say 8-3 Dodgers tomorrow, and we'll go from there. Let's see what else we got. We got Carlos Medina says Kershaw goes 7 or 8 innings, 1 earned run. Chase Aguilar 5-2 with Mookie Betts a home run. Carlos also says Dodgers win 4-0. So Kershaw gives up a run and they win 4-0. So those two are hard. Maxwell Dunlap says Dodgers in 4. Let's see. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, someone mentions like Kershaw. It's a big one for him tomorrow in the playoff narrative. He has one good start. Can he start to string a couple of these together? How significant is this game? In the grand scheme of things, it's not a World Series Game 7, obviously, but it does feel like if he can just put a couple of these together, we'll see what happens. So any final thoughts from you, Daniel, before we sign off here?
I'm just happy they won Game 1 because we've seen in every single series against the Padres this season, the Dodgers have lost the first game. So I'm glad this time around it didn't take a punch in the mouth for them to get going. Yeah,
I'm with you. I mean, those first 5 innings felt just all too familiar. Except for Buehler getting out of the 2nd inning. Somebody tweeted, this is what it must feel like to watch the Giants in their postseason. I mean, that was like a pretty perfect, like it feels like you just crap together 5 runs and you win 5-1. But to get this, they had already played a series, but this just felt, get the monkey off your back, get a couple hits, string some runs together, get a little bit of good luck, get the bullpen going, and just cruise into the rest of the series. I'm not saying it's going to be easy as in they're going to cruise to a win, but I just think tonight ended up 7, 8, 9. We're super comfortable for the Dodgers once they got those 5 runs, and I think that was good. At least for a fan, I was appreciative. The Lakers made me sweat a little bit. The Dodgers were not looking good, but the night ended well in both places, so I can appreciate that. Grayson adds, hitting is contagious for sure. So that'll do it for us tonight, but just as a note, the plan is to be back tomorrow on a live show. Game 3 is TBD. We're kind of seeing how the Lakers series plays out. Obviously, they could be clinching a title, but depending on when those games end. But we'll definitely be back live tomorrow. We'll probably be live for Game 4 if there is one, and then we'll go from there. So we appreciate all of you joining us and sticking with us. Congratulations to Maxwell Dunlap. He's getting a hat. Again, if you're still watching, find me on Twitter or send us a message on Facebook. So make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel as well. And for those that didn't win, we're going to do this again tomorrow night. We'll give away another hat, so stay tuned for that. But that'll do it for us tonight. The Dodgers win 5-1, Game 1 of the NLDS. Clayton Kershaw on the mound tomorrow. For Game 2 at 6 p.m., go Dodgers.